Sometimes love arrives quietly, like a hand finding yours in a dim hallway. The first time he noticed my curves and the soft sway of my hips, he didn't smirk or look away. He steadied his breath, and mine followed. We were both in our late 50s, moving slower but listening better. He saw not a body to fix, but a life to hold. That small, honest glance pulled a chair out for Hope and invited it to sit. Today, I want to tell you how that moment became a home and how tenderness at any age can rewire everything. If you've ever needed a gentle nudge toward hope, stay with me. Tap subscribe, like, and share this with someone who deserves a softer story. Leave a comment about the moment you first felt truly seen. Together, we'll build a patient, heart-healthy community where love grows steadily day by day. Hello, friends. Make yourself comfortable. Today is a story, true, quiet, and steady, about two men who met later in life and learned that love has its own pace. I'll talk to you the way I would in a clinic room or over a cup of tea. No rush, plenty of breath, and room for every feeling. If you're watching this with a hand on your knee and a little ache in your shoulder, that's okay. Consider this your gentle invitation to sit back, unclench your jaw, and let something warm find its way in. We were both 58. I had 2 pairs of comfortable shoes and a closet full of linen shirts that didn't always button smoothly around my middle. That's a small truth, but it matters. I had more songs than abs, more recipes than gym stories, more patience than swagger. People sometimes say, "You look strong," and what they mean is, "You look like you've carried some things." They're right. Grief, a long winter, a long marriage that ended quiet as snow, a year of walking the neighborhood in a coat that never felt warm enough. You know how it is. You put your heart on a shelf for a while and tell yourself you'll come back to it when time allows. His name is Ben. He is the kind of man who reads plaques at historical sites and smiles at dogs like they're old friends. He keeps his keys on a red cord so they're easy to find. He builds bird feeders out of scrap wood and paints them the color of clean sky. And the first time he looked at me, really looked, I felt the tiniest rearrangement in my ribs, as if my house figured out where its windows ought to be. It started in the multi-purpose room at the community center, scuffed floor, taped lines, a novelty sign that read hydration station. I was there for a low-impact movement class. My doctor had said, "Your hips will thank you," and I had decided to take my own advice for once. The music was gentle. We were a circle of neighbors with water bottles and soft knees, guided by a patient instructor who believed in small wins. The routine that day was a series of slow steps to the left, then to the right, a little sway in. The middle, arms floating like we were polishing the inside of a bubble. I was shy about the sway. For years, I had trained myself to move in straight lines, brisk walks, efficient errands, purposeful turns. Curves asked for vulnerability. Curves made room for softness. Curves told the truth. And then, in the mirror, I noticed him noticing me. Not a distracted glance. Not the assessing look you get at clothing stores. His face softened. His eyes warmed. His shoulders lifted slightly as if he recognized a favorite song. It wasn't a look of taking. It was a look of receiving a person as is. I felt my hips move through the sway, and for the first time in years, I did not apologize to myself for the shape of my body. I saw a man whose gaze said simply, "I like that you are here. I like how you move." Our instructor called a break. People sipped. Someone adjusted a hearing aid. I reached for my water and he stepped closer, leaving the respectful space that people who have known hurt know to leave. "Good pace," he said, gentle smile. "I like the way you let the song hold you." I laughed a little because it felt brave to be seen. "I'm learning," I said. "I've always been more of a straight-line walker." "I'm Ben," he said, offering his name like a warm towel. "And I'm more of a curved person. I think we come back to circles eventually. After class, we ended up at the cafe across the street. Not a date, not yet. Two men who had learned slowly the value of unhurried conversation. He ordered decaf and honey. I ordered tea with lemon and a scone that looked like it knew the word comfort. We found a table by the window and placed our elbows carefully, the way people do when they want to listen well. The cafe's window faced the park. Dogs negotiated the weather. A child in a blue jacket jumped in a puddle with both feet. Ben watched it all with an affectionate patience I recognized. Maybe he had waited at hospital bedsides the way I had. Maybe he had sat through long family meetings where feelings and facts tried to be friends. There is a kind of quiet you only learn from staying. He asked me about the class, about my shoes, about whether I had a preferred walking route. Not interrogating, just making a map. I told him about my streets, how I liked to pass the bakery even if I didn't go in, just to breathe the sweet air, how I had named the tall maple on Green Street Cathedral because it made the afternoon light sing. He nodded like I'd said something important. He told me he'd retired from teaching woodshop and art at the high school 5 years earlier. I liked watching kids make something out of nothing, he said. They think the wood has a mind. The real trick is learning to meet it where it is, not where you want it to be. Sounds familiar, I said. We talked about hips and bodies, and all the way culture asks us to be hard where we are soft. He said quietly, softness is not surrender. It's a sign the heart feels safe. Outside, the blue-jacketed child jumped again. Inside, we smiled like two people who had found an echo. I won't pretend there weren't ghosts in the room with us. I carried memories that were careful and cold. A man I had loved once measured my worth with a tape that only fit one body. Another had pointed out a menu item and joked, "Maybe skip that, huh?" I had complied, out of a misplaced devotion to a version of me that would be pleasing to a stranger. You learn eventually to separate love from approval. Approval is a door that locks behind you. Love is a porch light that stays on. Ben shared his own history. He had been with one man for many years, a kind, quiet person who grew ill and then grew quiet in a different way. Grief is not a problem to solve, Ben said, voice steady. It's a place you learn to live besides, like a river you stop, trying to dam. Some days the water rises, some days it doesn't. On the good days, you remember how to plant things. We paused. We sipped. Between us, an open space where honesty could stand up and stretch. I noticed the way his hands rested. Relaxed, present, capable. I noticed my shoulders had dropped an inch from their usual home under my ears. I noticed, without flinching, that my hips pressed against the chair in a way that meant I was solid, and here and not going anywhere. He noticed too, I think. He wasn't coy about it, and he wasn't crude. He's a man who looks at a thing when it's in front of him and says its name with care. "Would you like to walk?" he asked while glancing toward the park. "If your hips are up for it." "They are," I said. "They like company." We crossed the street like gentlemen who had made friends with the yellow light. The path in the park was damp but friendly, and the air carried the smell of wet leaves. A bench wore a thin green coat of moss. We walked beside each other with the elegant courtesy of people who know pain and don't plan to deliver any more of it to anyone. We talked about simple things first. His favorite tool was a plane, not a saw, because it coaxes rather than conquers. I told him I always read the acknowledgments first in books because it shows you how gratitude arranges a life. He laughed and said, "Then you must like the part of the movie where they tell you who did the lighting." He was right. I do. At one point, I slipped slightly on a patch of slick earth. Ben's hand came to my elbow, not grabbing, just there, like the curve where the shore allows the river to lean. "All right?" he asked. "All right," I said, and found that I meant it beyond the moment. We reached a little rise in the path where you can see the whole park sigh. Ben stopped. I stopped. In the silence that followed, I felt my hips sway with my breath as I stood. It had been so long since I'd allowed a sway to be simply a sway, not a shame. The sway said I was alive. The sway said I carried stories. The sway said I would not be trimmed to fit anyone's shelf. He didn't turn away from that truth. He turned toward it. He looked slowly, respectfully, as if reading a poem painted on a wall. "I see you," he said. That was all. And the way he said it made the rest of the world soften into background, like the metronome you only notice when it stops. Ben and I didn't rush into anything loud. We exchanged numbers with the calm care of people who understand that trust grows like plants, not like fireworks. Over the next weeks, we traded messages about the farmer's market, about which bus line is calmer at noon, about a thrift store, with shirts that forgive. We met for tea. We fed each other's calm. One afternoon, when winter's shoulder was pressing against the city, my apartment's front door stuck stubbornly. It's an old building, with a proud history and an exhausted hinge. I texted Ben for the name of a handyman. He replied, "I can come by, I like fixing squeaks." When he arrived, he wore a sweater that looked exactly like comfort feels. He took a look, hummed once, and made a small adjustment, then another. The door sighed open, grateful. He didn't comment on the tidy baskets by my shoe rack or the stack of cookbooks like a friendly fortress. He noticed them. That was enough. "Thank you," I said. "People underestimate the power of a door that doesn't fight you." "True," he smiled. "It changes how you enter your day." We stood very briefly in the doorway we had just corrected, and I felt that quiet rearrangement of my ribs again. This is a thing love does, even before it calls itself love. It reduces friction. There was a day when I almost blew it. Fear sometimes speaks in tidy sentences. "He'll change his mind," it said. "He'll ask you to become less of yourself." So I tried to outpace the inevitable. I made a joke about my weight, my hips. I made it sharp in the way that protects the softest parts of you by injuring them first. Ben didn't laugh. He didn't scold. He let the quiet be quiet. Then he put his tea down and looked into my face with a care that gathered the room. "May I tell you something?" he asked, as if permission was a gift. "Please," I said, a little breathless. "I like your curves," he said, without rush. "I like the shape of how you exist in a room. I like that your hips tell the truth about your life. I do not want less of you. I want your present as you are." In that moment, the ground shifted under my feet and found itself steady. Maybe this is the miracle of late-life love. It shows up with a toolbox. It doesn't try to demolish the house. It makes the doors easier. It seals the porch from drafts. It respects the original character. It hangs a frame straight and makes sure the nail hit a stud. He made space for every part of me I had been taught to tuck away, and he did it without spectacle. A kindness you don't have to recover from. Sometimes that's all it takes. The body is an honest narrator. One morning, a month or so into our slow, careful courtship, my right knee complained with conviction. I'd stepped off a curb too quickly. Pain has a way of shrinking the world, and mine did. I canceled our planned walk. Next time, I texted, trying to sound light. "I'll be less dramatic," he replied in under a minute. "Thank you for telling me. Can I bring soup? I make a humble one. Easy on salt, good on comfort." I considered saying no out of an old instinct to manage myself alone, but I looked at my knee, which looked back like a friend who knows my tricks, and texted yes. He arrived with a pot and a towel, like a midwife bringing heat to a cold room. The soup was exactly what he said, humble, gentle, and warm. He placed it on the stove, washed the one spoon I'd left in the sink without comment, and ladled 2 bowls. He didn't hover when I sat. He didn't overhelp. He was present, not performative. I learned things that day that no book had taught me. There is a way to sit near someone in pain that tells them they are not their pain. There is a way to look at a person's body, my body with its curves and soft hips and aching knee, and make even the ache feel like part of a larger, gentler story. That day, the house of me grew another room where peace could sleep. Spring turned itself in, and the community center hosted a dance, not the fast kind. The kind with slow songs that let you breathe, that ask you to count to 3 because 3 is a number the heart understands. I almost didn't go. Fear again in the soft shoes of what if. But Ben texted, "I'll be there. If you need to sit, we'll sit. If you need to stand, we'll stand. If you need to sway, we'll sway." The night of, rain drummed steady like a friendly knock. I wore a navy shirt that forgave and a pair of pants that knew my shape. Ben wore a tie he'd inherited from a friend, thin stripes like lines in a notebook. When he saw me, he didn't whistle or whoop. He smiled deeply, like a clasp closing with satisfying precision. The band tuned, the lights dimmed, and the floor filled with people who had found their own brave. Some danced with walkers nearby. Some moved from chair to chair, telling stories with their hands. We waited until the second song before stepping out. The music was a waltz, the kind you could count with the pattern of your own breath. We found a place near the edge where the light fell kindly. Ben held my hand. It wasn't a possessive hold. It was a yes. His other hand rested respectfully at my shoulder blade. We moved. I felt my hips join the song, a slow sway that matched a rhythm older than doubt. This is a detail I want you to have. He did not steer me like I was cargo. He walked with me. He allowed the dance to find our measure. At one turn, I saw our reflection. In the window, the rain on the glass, our bodies within, 2 men who had learned to tell the truth more often than not. My curves were not disguised by the shadow. My soft hips were not edited by the light. I met my own gaze with something like compassion. That's a kind of intimacy, too. By the 3rd song, we were warm. By the 4th, a bit flushed. By the 5th, we had stopped noticing anyone else. Ben leaned toward my ear, not to own the moment, but to place a gift inside it, and whispered, "I didn't know I could feel at home like this. I didn't know I was allowed to love a body this honestly." The words didn't land like fireworks. They landed like bread on a table. Nourishing, solid, meant to be shared. I swallowed, felt a hot well in my chest, and answered quietly, "Me, too." We kept moving, counting to 3, making a small, endless circle. At the end of the night, coats on, rain gentler now, he lifted my hand to his lips. A simple kiss. The kind that remembers we are both grown men with histories and hopes. The kind that says, "I know what tenderness can do. It can rewire everything." It wasn't dramatic after that. It was better. He started leaving his umbrella by my door, and I started keeping 2 extra tea bags in the canister. One for him, one for me. Saturday mornings, we'd walk to the market and share a basket. He'd pick carrots with tops like fireworks, and I'd grab tomatoes shaped like little hearts. We argued gently about peaches. He liked them firm. I like them to lean into your thumb. There are love stories that rush. Ours learned to lower its voice. We did not fix all of each other's broken things, but we made sure the broken things had better chairs. For the first time in so long, I heard the sentence in my own head. I am loved as I am. The body hears that. It responds. My breath softened. My shoulders found a new home. My hips. They told their truth without apology, and his hands, when they held me, held that truth with an understanding that felt like prayer. I want to say this clearly for anyone watching who has been taught to be smaller than you are. There is a kind of love that doesn't bargain with your shape. If someone loves you only when you are edited, that is their mirror talking. Find the person who likes how the light already falls on you. Find the person who adjusts the curtains, not you. Our kitchen became a small church. We experimented with flavor the way some people experiment with paint. He had a way with herbs. I knew how to build a broth. We learned to cook for bodies that needed kindness. Less salt, more lemon, less heat, more patience. He'd stand at the stove and sway a little, and I'd watch the way the light found him. Sometimes I'd move behind him, gentle as steam, and wrap my arms around his waist. "Hey," he'd say, smiling, "sway with me." And we would, pots murmuring, windows fogging. There is holiness in that. Two grown men letting the day rest on its feet. On Tuesdays, when my knee behaved, we'd go for our modest walk. We kept a pace that allowed conversation, the kind where silence isn't a problem. We named 3 things we were grateful for. The man who rakes his leaves with theatrical commitment, the library's plant that refuses to surrender, the way our neighbor's cat pretends not to know us and then sits on our stoop anyway. Gratitude turns out to be excellent joint medicine. People asked gently about us. A cousin, a friend. They worried I might be rushing, which was funny, because most of our time together involved very slow activities. Cooking, reading on the same couch without talking, tracing the weather like a story we were learning through. Repeated readings. I told them a truth I'd learned in a clinic room long ago. Steady is not the opposite of strong. Steady is how the strong endure. Ben and I had our differences. He liked mornings soft. I liked mornings with a list. He would stop to read plaques. I would look for the snack table. But our values rhymed. Patience, kindness, a willingness to talk about the things that scrape you raw. On a blustery evening in early fall, he took my hand as we crossed the street and said, "You're my favorite person to sit quietly with." He didn't adorn it more. It didn't need more. Love sometimes arrives without adjectives, and it is no less true. You might wonder when we said the word. Love. It happened on a Tuesday, like so many gentle revolutions do. I was trying on a shirt that had the decency to be honest about how it would fit me in the store and at home. Ben waited in the hallway, tapping a rhythm on the wall trim with a carpenter's absent affection. The shirt slid over my hips, and I paused, palms against the fabric, feeling the place where I'd once wished myself away. I took a breath. I met my own gaze in the mirror, tenderly, and I walked out. He looked up. He saw me the way he had on. That first day. Saw me moving in a body that had survived, grown, softened, and told all the truth it knew. He smiled, and I recognized the expression. It was the one people wear when the song they love returns unexpectedly on the radio. He stepped forward and placed his hands on my hips, gentle and sure, not to measure, not to judge, just to meet. His touch was a promise. "I love you," he said as if saying grace. "I love what you look like when you're not bracing." The air didn't hum, it steadied. I felt the floor take my weight and give it back as support. "I love you too," I said. "And I like the edges and curves of your kindness. It fits me." We stood there, 2 men in a hallway with a shirt that fit or didn't. It didn't matter, and decided, without needing ceremony, that we would be each other's person. We didn't rush to a courthouse. We didn't post a big announcement. We made a promise to check the weather for each other, to name our needs before they turned into storms, to take the morning briskly when it asked for it, and gently when it didn't. We promised to let our bodies be our teachers. Mine said, "Move slowly, bring water, stretch kindly." His said, "Eat oranges in winter. Sit in the sun when you can. Let your hands rest." When you're young, you think love is a firework. When you're older, you learn it's a handrail. Sturdy, near, willing. It doesn't ask you to be spectacular. It asks you to keep going. We kept going, One day at a time, delighted to be allowed to be ordinary together. I promised a story and I gave you one. Let me also leave you with a few gentle notes in the tone of a doctor who has seen some things and wants you to feel safe inside your own life. Your body is not a negotiation. It's your home. Decorate it with care and let people in who wipe their feet. Slowness is not laziness. It's information. If you need to slow down, you're listening. Curves are not apologies. They are biographies. They tell where you have been, what you have carried, who you have fed, and how you have lived. Let people love you where you are. If they ask you to become invisible to fit their comfort, thank them for the lesson and keep walking. Check your breath. In through the nose, out through the mouth. A little longer out than in. It helps truly. Walk with someone who likes your pace, not someone who tolerates it. The right person will enjoy the views you stop to admire. Keep a small, pleasant ritual for hard days. A cup of tea, a favorite song, a page of a book read aloud. Rituals are bridges. If you can, talk to your doctor about your hips, your knees, your heart. You deserve care that respects the map of your life. We had days that were not noteworthy. Tuesday laundry, Thursday soup, Sunday calls to friends. He fixed a stubborn drawer by listening to it first. I labeled the spice jars because I like clarity that smells like cumin. He built a low stool so I could reach the top shelf without pretending to be taller than I am. I learned step by step that love is less about being enthralling and more about being kind at 4 p.m. Sometimes we danced in the kitchen because the radio found a waltz. Sometimes we sat in separate rooms, the house humming, respect like a soft rug under every step. I liked how he would pass by and place a palm on my hip in greeting, like you would touch the banister that keeps the stairs honest. I liked how I could lean into that touch for a second and feel steadied without being held still. We went to the river once a month. He liked to count the ducks. I liked to count the breaths. We brought a small blanket and 2 apples. We sat like people who had learned how to share silence without needing to polish it. He would sometimes rest his hand over mine, and I would sometimes rest my hand over his. If you had walked past, we might have looked like any 2 friends. That's all right. Some things belong to the inside of a moment. Once, a boy, teen, kind eyes, skated past, looped back, and said, "I like your matching hats." We laughed and thanked him. When he rolled away, Ben leaned in and said, "We are an easy sight." I knew what he meant. There is happiness that makes a lot of noise, and then there is happiness that fits on a bench with 2 apples. I would wish the second kind for anyone. We had a late-night ache once that sent us to urgent care. Nothing dramatic, just the body's way of reminding you that you should keep your appointments. I sat on the papered table while he read a pamphlet politely. The nurse was kind. The doctor was precise. We did what they said. As we left, deep in the quiet of the street, he took my hand and said, "I know what to do when I'm afraid now. I stand next to you." There are people who make fear louder. There are people who make fear quieter. If you can, keep the second kind close. Years will go by. We will get slower. We will be forgiven by our own bodies more often than not. We will take turns reaching the top shelf. He will keep building bird feeders, and the birds will keep considering his invitations. I will keep cooking soups that have learned respect. The waltzes will still exist. We will still count to 3. We will still turn toward the window in the evening and say, without deciding to, "That is a lovely light." Every so often I will catch him looking at me the way he did in that movement class, and I will feel that quiet rearrangement again. The hips he loves, soft, honest, will move a little. The breath I trust will settle. He fell in love with me forever the first time he noticed my curves and chose to see them as something right rather than something to move around. I didn't know I needed that until I had it. Now I know, and I want to keep knowing. If you are watching this and thinking that your curves have cost you something, hear me gently. Your curves have given you something too. Balance, story, a shape that fits your life. If you are afraid no one will see you and say, I like the way you move, I will look at you now and say, I like the way you exist. There is someone, somewhere, who will keep pace with you, who will stand on a dance floor and find your measure, who will make soup when you need soup and say your name like a soft bell. If you are older and wondering if love is done with you, I will say what I tell my patients and friends. The heart is a muscle designed for use. It wants work. Gentle work, yes. Steady work, yes. But work. It grows not from spectacle, but from repetition. A hello, a walk, a cup handed over a counter. A kind question asked not to pry, but to understand. All of that adds up. Let me bring us back to the first day. To the mirror. To the circle of people, with water bottles and brave faces. To the song that asked us to sway. I was scared, yes. I did it anyway. He noticed kindly. He did not make me smaller. He did not make me harder. He did not make me less like myself. He gave me a look that said my softness didn't need an apology. He let that kindness be a habit, and I let it heal me. Sometimes love arrives in a hallway. Sometimes it arrives on a dance floor. Sometimes it arrives at a kitchen sink, with one spoon left to wash, and it turns the chore into a duet. When he noticed my curves, he didn't fall into hunger. He fell into recognition. He fell into the feeling of home. And I, slowly, bravely, fell with him. The light in my living room is softer now. The teacup is empty. Somewhere, a radio is finding a waltz. I hope, wherever you are, you can feel the small handrail of this story under your palm. If you can, tonight, stand in front of a mirror and look without editing. Put your hand on a place you have apologized for and say, thank you for carrying me. Then go make yourself a cup of something warm. If someone is near, invite them to sit. If not, sit anyway. The heart has a long memory for moments when it was treated kindly. Give it one to keep. He noticed my curves and my soft hips, and he fell in love forever. I learned to let him. I learned to love him back with the same steadiness. That is the whole story. That is enough. And if you need to hear it again, I'll be here, telling it as often as you ask.